Hi friends, I'm Gwen.
And I'm Jacqueline. Welcome to Talk Bookish to Me,
the podcast where friends get together and talk about books.
Happy Monday, bookworms. It's time for another book discussion. Gwen and I will be discussing The Project by Courtney Summers. In the details of today's episode, we'll link the author's website and have a link for you to purchase the book if you'd like. Our next book discussion won't be until this summer, but we have a lot of exciting topics on the way.
So Courtney Summers, the author of today's book discussion, is a New York Times bestselling author of several novels. Her career in writing began in 2008 when she was 22. Her work has been released to critical acclaim with multiple starred reviews, receiving numerous awards and honors. And she has reviewed for the New York Times, is the founder of the 2015 worldwide trending hashtag to all the girls, and in 2016 she was named one of Flair's magazine's 60 under 30. She lives and writes in Canada. Now the book that we're going to be discussing today, The Project by Courtney Summers, I'm just going to give you a little brief synopsis. So the main character, Lo Denham, is used to being on her own. After her parents died, Lo's sister Bee joined the Unity Project, leaving Lo in the care of their great aunt. Thanks to its extensive charitable work and community outreach, the Unity Project has won the hearts and minds of most in the upstate New York region. But Lo knows that there's more to the group than meets the eye. She spent the last 6 years of her life trying and failing to prove it. So when a man shows up at the magazine Lo's working for, claiming the Unity Project killed his son, Lo sees the perfect opportunity to expose the group and reunite Bee once and for all. When her investigation pulls her in the direct path of the Unity Project's leader, Lev Warren, and as Lo delves deeper into the project, the lies of its members, it upends everything she thought she knew about her sister, herself, cults, and the world around her. Now it's time for our star rating time, and I think Jacqueline has a little surprise for you guys, but I ended up rating the story 3 stars. What happened on your end, Jacqueline?
So I ended up DNFing it.
Okay,
unfortunately.
So I know you were worried about DNFing this book since we were talking about it on today's episode, but let this be a reminder to you, our listeners, and to ourselves that life is short. There are already so many requirements and duties we must perform. Reading a book we're not enjoying is not one of those things. We do this for fun, and if it's not fun, why bother? So DNF away, we sure do. Is there anyone that you would recommend this book to, Jacqueline?
Honestly, I don't know, because I know a lot of people thought I was going to like it because of the cult aspect, but it's a different cult aspect than what I feel like I like. This one was definitely a lot more religious, and I feel like the cults that I like reading about, they're not talking about Jesus Christ and your savior and stuff like that. It's just a cult in and of itself, with a different meaning behind it, if that makes sense. Polygamy, I don't know. It's just different. And so I really have no clue who I would recommend this book to. I don't know. You would have to be very specific in what you like for even an adult reader to like this book.
Yeah, I think fans of Courtney Summers will want to add this to their collection, just because she has some really hardcore fans out there. I think if you're a new YA reader and you're looking for a harder hitting topic type book, maybe a cult story, it's definitely a cult stories for beginners. I will say that. And if you really like stories about sisters, okay, yeah, this has that sister aspect to it. So I know that we've both read Sadie by this author.
Actually, I DNF'd Sadie. So
okay.
I think what I'm getting to is Courtney
Sadie.
Summers is not for me. Okay, I've tried 2 books by her now.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so we have both attempted Sadie. I read Sadie. I really enjoyed it. I liked that it had the podcast elements, and I think that's why I narrowed into it. It was also a story about sisters. So considering her track record, you're probably not going to be picking up anything else by this author.
No, I think it's also part of her writing style. I had a really hard time getting into Sadie, and I've done everything that people say. They're listen to it on audio, and I tried all of that, and I don't know, it must just be her writing style that I don't like very much. And I know that her books are very character driven, and I am not a character driven person, so I think that is the problem. I also, now that you bring up, like, yeah, both of those stories are about sisters, and I don't like to read stories about sisters. Like, that dynamic is not something that not that I dislike it, I guess I just don't ever, I'm not interested in it.
You're not gravitated towards it. Yeah. So I have read Sadie. I did enjoy it. The audio experience was pretty fantastic. I have Cracked Up to Be on my TBR. So I don't know when or if I'll get to that, but I had no idea she had such a deep backlist. And if I read more YA, I would probably go back and read quite a few, because her synopses always sound, synopses, however you say that word, they always sound so good, but I don't read a bunch, so I'll probably just skip. Like I said, I might finish up the other one that I have Cracked Up to Be, but if you read YA, I would say definitely take a look at her backlist, because she has a lot out there.
I didn't even realize she had a backlist. I thought Sadie was her debut novel, but what do I know? Now it's time for spoilers. We're going to be chatting about the characters and the plot. If you've read the book or DNF'd, like me, or you're here just for the discussion, then you can stay tuned.
Before we jump into our usual line of questioning, what ultimately made you decide to DNF the book?
Ooh, I actually didn't realize that you were going to ask me this question. I like this question. Okay, so I was listening to it and like trying to read the physical book, which is normally like, if I can't immediately get into a book, that's what I'll like do to kind of like keep my focus on. I honestly couldn't even keep my focus on this book. I don't even know what it was, but I just kept tuning it out. Even if I was like listening to it and reading the actual book like together, I just kept tuning out everything. And I don't know if it's because like, to me, there was absolutely no plot at all. And I also didn't enjoy any of the, like, Lo or B. I don't know, they just weren't the kind of characters that I was interested in. I thought that Lo was kind of like, not bratty, but like kind of a little whiny, the way that she was acting towards like her boss and stuff, and acting like, you know, like the world had to like give her everything. And when I got to like a lot of the like religious part of the cult, where they're talking about like, you know, they're taking a lot of like parts of Bible verses and being like, oh, we're doing this like, you know, within our Savior and stuff. I just immediately was like, this is not the type of cult that I like. For some reason, even with like horror movies that have like religious aspects to it, I just don't like horror movies that are like that. I don't know why. It's not that I have anything where I'm like offended by it. I just don't care about it, and I immediately am like, ew, gross. Like I guess I feel like I don't know, it's like a bad church service, I guess. So there was a lot of that during the cultish part. I thought that the cultish part was going to be what was going to like carry me through the book, and then I ended up not even liking that part. So
yeah, I don't think that the cult part really came in until like probably more than 50% through the novel anyway. So the whole first, like, I need a book to at least suggest the good part. Like, I hate when you watch a trailer for a movie and the trailer shows you everything that's good, and then you watch the movie and you're like, this movie sucks. Yeah. I already saw the good stuff in the trailer. Like, you could have made this a 2-minute film and it would have been great. Right. And that's how I felt this book was. I feel like the very like end part of this book was super strong, but no one's going to read 90% of a book for 10% that's decent. Yeah. And she didn't even like hint at the good stuff. Like, it was just, you were just trudging through this. And I know that you're not the only one that has DNF'd this book. There's tons of people that have DNF'd this book because you just do feel like you're trudging through it. So mentioning characters, I particularly was not drawn to Lo or B either. And those are the two sisters. So Lo being the main character, B being her sister. I did like Foster quite a bit, but he wasn't in there until halfway through towards the end of the book. And then Lev as the antagonist was an interesting character, especially if you read the whole book and you know like his full story. And Emmy, the little girl, I did think that she was super innocent and written well for her age. I often find that children younger than 10 in YA stories or adult adult books are either written too babyish or too grown. And I really did think that Emmy was done well. But I didn't really love any characters. And it's really, really hard when your main character, you're just not attaching to. The secondary character, you're not really attaching to. And so you're just reading about these people that you really don't care about. It's almost like having an actor or an actress that you really don't care about and having to read an article about them. Like, I don't care about your life. I don't like you.
Yeah.
So were there any characters that you like?
I wouldn't say I necessarily liked anybody, but I do like the portrayal of Lev being like the cult leader and how charismatic cult leaders can be. That's what I liked about when I was reading the Charles Manson book, that like they are so likable, and that's how I guess they kind of like draw people in. So I thought that that's like a good representation of like, or as far as I know, the cult leaders I've read about. My cult research. No. But I do like that he was portrayed that way. But yeah, I don't know. I felt like Lo and B, even though this was about sisters, I don't feel like they had a sister connection. And like most of the book that I was reading, like the parts that I was reading, was just B not even like talking to Lo or not wanting anything to do with her. So it was just irritating over and over again. I feel like that was like the message that was being put on in the book. So I don't know.
All right, so there were definitely more characters that I did not like than I liked. I mean, I would say maybe Foster. Lev was definitely interesting, but of course as the antagonist. But yeah, Lo and B didn't work, which was odd since it was a story about them. I didn't like Paul. I didn't like Lauren. I didn't like Casey. I don't know for sure if Paul's story arc was supposed to redeem him or not, but he never treated Lo fairly, and he never gave her a chance to spread her wings. He never gave her the opportunity for growth. And we are just so tired of seeing men that are above women in a field not giving them the praise and the room to grow. It just is annoying. So Lauren was a low-key bitch, and Casey is one of those adults who knows everything that's happened or is happening and does nothing to stop it or warn people. Hate people like that. Like that's, Lo, I think she's like 19 in this story. And like, so she still is impressionable, and she should have been warned, or like Casey was just like drawing her in. I didn't like it. So I realized that she was caught up in the cycle of the Unity Project, but she could have told Lo certain things, especially like what happened to be. Like she could have told her like up front. So what about you? It sounds like you pretty much were like me. Like you just didn't really like anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I connected with anybody enough to like hate them or like them. So I think that's the problem. Like I think because you read the whole book, you know exactly like who you didn't like, and I just didn't care about anybody.
You were just indifferent to it all.
Yeah. And a lot of times, like, that's the problem with, like, sometimes when I'm listening to an audiobook, like, I can really like a character. And I noticed that with my daily vlogging this week that, like, I'll go to talk about the book and I'll be like, wait, I don't even know this character's name. Yeah. So I have to, like, actually make a point to, like, look at it in the book and be like, okay, the person that I'm liking is named this. Because otherwise, like, I know that I'm liking somebody, but I just forget, like, I just don't pay attention to what their name is, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely think that we're both more plot-driven readers than character-driven readers. Like, I can tell you the plot of a book way better than I can talk about, like, the characters, what they look like, the relationship to other people.
Yeah.
And this week with Readathon, we're both participating in the Backlist Readathon, which is Jacqueline's Readathon that she's hosting with a couple of other people. It's been an amazing week. It's awesome. And I'm sure we'll talk about it again in a future episode. But yeah, I have read quite a few books this week that were character-driven books. And I feel bad because these are highly acclaimed books, like The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. And what other one did I read that was there was another one that I read that was like heavily character-focused. And I'm like, important themes and topics, but like, the plot is very minimal compared to like the character dynamics with each other and things like that. And it's like, I don't want to devalue the book. I'm not devaluing the book. Like, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's not for me, because while I liked the characters, I liked the themes and messages, like, enough wasn't propelling me forward to want to read it.
Yeah.
So,
that's a good point that you make. And I think that's one of the reasons why, like, we're both thriller lovers, obviously. So I think that's why we kind of gravitate.
I think that's why we are drawn to them.
Yeah. But I think that's also why I am now getting into memoirs because, yes, those are very character driven, like you're learning about the character. But even though it's not, I wouldn't call it plot driven, I would say that I am always fascinated with the dark, like, history that they've gone through, like their life. Right. And so to me, that is like the plot that I'm like, you know, missing out on some of these other like just fiction character books. Whereas the memoirs, I'm liking the character, I'm learning more about the character, and I like, you know, hearing what they've gone through. But I'm always, and I do pick like dark memoirs, but I'm always like surprised. I'm like, oh my gosh, they really went through this. Like, oh my God, what are they going to go through next? Like, oh my God, you know, and so.
And it's like their life story. So you're starting when they're younger and they're going to their older, or vice versa, however they decide to tell it. But yeah, you still are going through those milestones. Like, okay, this is what happened when they were in elementary school, and this is what happened when they were in middle school and high school. And, you know, so it's more of a linear timeline. And that's another thing that I found out is some books, I don't mind past and present. I actually like it in thrillers when they're like, this year, you know, 15 years ago, this happened or whatever. I don't mind that. But there's some books like Station 11, which I read this week, that the timeline jumps. I'll just get settled into the before and then it jumps to the after. And you're like,
So that's funny because I have recently just figured out that I despise the time jumps. And that's funny that you said, yeah, memoirs are such a linear, like that must be why I love it, because in my head, I can easily follow through. Right. Whereas, yes, with the project, and also I read His and Hers, and that like jumps back and forth. Well, not really back and forth in time. It does like go on, but it has like dates. It'll be like, Tuesday at 8:00. And like, to me, that means nothing to me. Like it literally means nothing.
Right. And that's how the project was. It skipped around. I don't feel like it was a linear timeline. I prefer a linear timeline with like a plot of events so I can see it like a timeline in my head.
Exactly.
And so that's definitely something that I have recognized that I like plot-driven stories rather than character-driven stories. Now, if there is a book that has good character development and a good plot, I'm like,
you're like
kiss,
5 stars. Here you go.
I mean, like, and I'll talk about some really good books in a future episode. But back to this one. So moving on to the plot and pacing, it's basically Lo searching for her sister who joined the Unity Project, and Lo believing that the project is a cult. And because of those two things and how they're intertwined in her mind, she would like to expose the project and save her sister. The pacing was decent enough, although I found it super hard to track along because the story jumps around a bunch. And I would never know whose perspective I was reading from, or what time, like, is this something from the past? Is this something currently happening? And I think leaving out the years at the top of the chapters and having Lo be the present chapters and italicizing B's chapters as the flashback chapters would have made it easier for me as a reader to understand, okay, this is happening presently, this is happening. But when they put like September 2017, I'm like, okay, well, where's 2017 in my timeline? Because when was this and when was that?
Right. That's the problem. Like, we're so visual that we have to have like we almost have to like write down notes and be like, okay, we're over here in 2017. Okay, let's go back to this year.
Yes.
Yeah, but the you know, putting it in italics would have been very good because that's how like His and Hers was. The like murderer is in italics. So when I was like reading, well, number one, the audiobook has the murderer, like the voice is like not messed up, but like through a box or whatever.
Distorted.
Yeah. So then when you're doing the audiobook, it's not the same narrator throughout the whole thing, and you're like, okay, like what am I listening to? But then even in the book, it's italics, so it's like easy to differentiate between, you know, his, hers, and the murderer, which was really great.
Also, I didn't care about her job at SVO at all. Like, I just did not care even the slightest bit. I think that, okay, so you're thinking, well, that's how she really got interested in this whole project thing. I think the story could have easily stemmed from her seeing Jeremy take his own life, which she did, and then the search for her sister, and then the Unity Project being in the news. that could have been the start of the story. It didn't have to be this SVO. She wants to write this article. It just could have been, I seen this guy take his life. I'm looking for my sister. The Unity Project is in the news, and I know my sister went to that, place. And yeah, I think it could have stemmed from that instead of like that whole timeline was just, I don't know. I just didn't like it.
Yeah. And I know that you had said before, like, how obviously Paul isn't like the best boss, but it was irritating. And I'm not saying I'm like defending Paul or anything, but like it was just irritating when he had like said about the one mistake that she made, and she literally just like kind of blew up on him. And I'm like, girl, like you can't do that in real life. Like I know you're like 19 or whatever, but that's not going to make you grow. Like I know that you could be angry about stuff, but like that's definitely not going to let you be promoted. You know what I mean? Right?
True.
I'm like, that was a little immature there.
As some of you know, I use Anchor to host my podcast, and I couldn't be more pleased with their service. It made it super easy to go from being a beginner that had no idea what in the world I was doing to someone that still has no idea what I'm doing, but it looks like I do because Anchor does all of the hard work for me. If you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, let me give you a rundown. Basically, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place, and here's how it works. Anchor lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to the most popular listening platforms, including Spotify, with a single tap. Anchor is also the only place you can publish video podcasts to Spotify. With Anchor, creators can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads like this one and podcast subscriptions. You want to hear the best part? Anchor is totally free. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
But you know what I think you should do? I think because I didn't finish the book, you should say like a whole synopsis of the whole book.
Okay, so you have Lo searching for her sister. And once she thinks that the Unity Project is a cult, and basically it is, but it's a religious cult. And once she finally says, screw it. Paul's not giving me the opportunity to go investigate them. I'm just going to do it anyway, which, like, how dangerous was that? Like, how dangerous are
every
these people?
horror movie ever.
Right. So she goes out there, and it does have slight cultist vibes to it. There's like a tent where they have a gathering of the people and stuff like that. The one lady, Casey, I just couldn't stand her because she was almost like the go-between Lev and like the other people in this cult. And they all kind of they were like people that had like everyday lives, but they could also live like on ground in these cabins and stuff like that. And they did do community outreach, but I think that was to like kind of hide the things that they were doing, like just what you would assume. So she goes out there, she starts interviewing him. He finally agrees to like be interviewed by her, and she has to go out there, and just like weird things happen. Like the first thing that I realized when she was led into this room and was like, oh yeah, wait here, like Lev will be out here in a minute. And she was just kind of like looking around, and she realized that all the doors were locked around her. I was like, bitch, you're locked in this room. That's a sign. That's a red flag. Like, so that was definitely crazy. But the most interesting thing that came about, and it wasn't until like the last 10% of the book, I swear, was that Lev was abusing his followers, like physically abusing them. And he would, kind of blame it on like, you've sinned, like, let me, punish you and stuff like that. He also had people go into this room, kind of like a confessional, and then they would confess their deepest, darkest secrets, and then he would play it for everybody to hear and stuff like this. And then the whole time, like, she's thinking like, I'm here to rescue my sister. Yeah. And you find out that her sister left a long time ago. Like, that's what they tell her. Like, your sister's not even here anymore. She's like, what the heck? But then, of course, you find out that she's dead. That so at the very end, she decides that she is going to go into it further because she starts getting lulled into this cult.
Oh, no.
Because she meets Foster, she meets Emmy, and she realizes that Emmy is her sister's daughter. And she doesn't know, like, who's the father and stuff like that. But she's like, man, if the only chance that I have to be with Emmy and make sure that she's okay and, like, be close to my sister and the people that were closest to her, like, I'm going to do this. So she was like, I'm going to be baptized and I'm going to be, like, part of this thing. And anyway, end of the story was Lev's dead. He died somehow. It wasn't very clear how, but basically, I think it was like on her baptism day, like he let her out, and I think she like drowned him, I think. But then after that, they dredged the lake and they find B's body. And then at the very, very end, she's having this like weird, like she ended up going back to SVO. And I'm just thinking, like, why would you ever go back? But whatever. I think they just wanted to, like, get her story, or I don't know. But anyway, she goes back, and then she's, like, kind of communicating with her sister, but it's not really her sister, because obviously her sister is dead. And it was just, like, too magically realism for me. And I was like, what is going on? But yeah, so it was terrifying. And there was, like, this father, I forget his name exactly right now, but there was this guy that was, like, helping her out and telling, like, no, it really, like, he is really bad news and stuff like that. And there were people that had, like, gotten away, and she was in contact with them. So yeah, he really was. He was a bad guy. It really was a cult. He was abusing people, and yeah.
See, I almost wish that, like, instead of, you know, it being between Lo and B's chapters, it would have been really cool if it was between, like, Lo and, like, and like glimpses into the cult, like what he was doing.
Yes, I was like, if she says Lev, I'm on board. Let's do it. Yes, I really do think it would have been cool, because even me as a reader, when I was reading it, I was like, so is it a cult, or are they just these like secular people, kind of like a hippie commune that like to keep to themselves and take care of one another and stuff like that? It literally wasn't until like the very end where you're finding out like he really is abusing people. He really is discouraging people to leave. Like he doesn't want people to leave. And it did kind of touch on, when B was with him still, how the first time, like, she went out to this place, like, in Washington, D.C., let's say, and there was this big thing, and they would be, like, passing out flyers and stuff like that, and how people were really, like, drawn to them, but how, because they were away from Lev, like, bad, quote-unquote, bad things were happening to them, and so it was, like, really interesting, but that was the last 10% of the book. Yeah. Like it did not get good until very far into the book. I don't know exactly how far, but I just remember it was a very long time.
Yeah, that ending, like, it does sound really, really good, but I really wish that it would have been mixed into the whole part of the book, because even when I read, when I read Member of the Family, that talks about the Charles Manson cult, like, I am sitting here as a reader, and you're reading about how, like, infatuated these girls are with him and how he can be so charismatic, but then it's also talking about the abuse, and then you're sitting here and you're like, oh my gosh, like, why are they staying? Like, I need to know, like, why are they staying? Like, how bad is this going to get? I wish that, I mean, I guess she was trying to make it so that way you can, like, keep guessing on whether it's a cult or not, but I wish that, she would have had it where it's like,
if they would have said something about the abuse in the beginning, it would have been so much cooler to know that it was a cult and then, like, see her interaction with it, I think.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
I wish that they would have given you, like, little breadcrumbs to say, look how cool this book's gonna be.
Yeah, I know.
And like I said, I think if they would have taken out the SVO storyline with her boss and all of that, they could have delved more into the cult aspect of it.
Highlighting some of the themes and possible trigger warnings that were in this book: it's suicide, cults, abuse, torture. The project focuses a lot on trauma and how cults use people's trauma and longing for community to recruit them to their cause, which is totally true. I see that in so many other cult books. You went ahead and told me the whole ending and everything, so what did you actually think about the ending?
So Lo deciding to join the Unity Project was so weird to me, and I didn't know if she genuinely wanted to join at that point, or if it was her trying to find out more information on her sister. Before she could even join and have her baptism, though, things got really interesting with Father Michael and Rob, which is one of the people that were abused and tortured. So they kind of revealed the truth about her sister. So we read about the abuse and the torture that Lev inflicts on his followers, and why that didn't come out sooner was boggling to me. Like, maybe they could have had Jeremy's autopsy show signs of the abuse or torture, and that would have made her more skeptical. And then the part where Lo fails to save Emmy, and she's led out to her baptism anyway, and then somehow Lev dies, and they dredge up the lake, and then they find Bee's body, and then all of a sudden Lo's back at SVO working for Paul. Like, I don't know. I think the ending was rushed. I wanted to know Lev's fate in detail. Like, finding out that he was such a manipulator, which obviously, and that he was abusing and torturing people, not only physically but mentally as well, with playing these recordings and stuff like that. I just wanted to know, did Lo drown him? Or did I'm pretty sure she did, but it wasn't in enough detail. He didn't get the ending he deserved.
Right. You wanted to see him die.
Just with Grown, with her abuser, abusers need to get their fate served to them in detail. So I'm pretty sure you didn't have any favorite quotes or passages, did you?
No.
Okay, so I'll go into mine. So on page 5, I liked the quote, "Having a sister is a promise no one but the two of you can make, and no one but the two of you can break." This is where that subtle manipulation and people making you feel special or chosen comes in. I have a couple of those. On page 99, it says, "You have to understand that what's about to be offered to you has never been offered to anyone before." So it's look what we're giving you, And then on page 111, the manipulation kind of continues. It says, "You wanted the truth, Lo. Yeah, but are you afraid of it now?" Just kind of goading her. And and we find out that he did lie about certain things, but he also distorted the truth to fit his narrative and lied by omission. Because he would never answer her questions when she was finally interviewing him. Anyway, and then on page 114, their primary objective is growth. Now we're building an army. If we don't have numbers, they will never be a movement. And if we do not become a movement, we will never be able to show people the path. I mean, talk about cult vibes.
Yeah.
And then more manipulation on page 120. And then on 163, Lo is at the Unity Center talking to Casey. And May introduces herself and lets Lo know that Casey's running late because she's supposed to be talking to Casey at this point. And May has a conversation with another girl seeking refuge at the project. And I just thought that this was kind of nice, but at the same time, it's all part of the manipulation factor. She says, "You don't have to be our worst case to be a worthy case." So this girl was coming there to seek refuge, and she's like, "But I don't know if my situation's really bad enough. I don't know if you can help me because I'm not the worst." And she's like, "Oh, you don't have to be the worst case to be a worthy case." And I was like, that would be the perfect line to draw someone in. And then just to show that kind of that chosen, you feel special when Lo's talking to Rob and she yells at him, "I was chosen." And he's like, "I'm so sorry, Lo. I know how much it means to feel that way." And that was just so powerful because she was already feeling drawn to, kind of do this, to join. And no, don't do it.
Yeah.
So there were lots of times that there was great, you could see it, the manipulation, the making you feel special, the, all the things, all the cult vibes. But like I said, these were all towards the end.
Yeah. Anything else you want to share? Do you have any other final thoughts?
I think this would be, if you're still interested, if you haven't read it, I think it would be a great book to read in the fall time for some reason. Like maybe it's the dark subject matter and the woods where Lev's cabin is, like the whole like cult sect is like out in the woods and stuff like that. But I will say that I do not think that this is summer's best book. I do have a signature cocktail, of course. It's the Red Evergreen, and I picked this drink because of the color and the rosemary, because rosemary has a very earthy taste to me, and that reminds me of like the grittiness of the book and the setting a bit. I won't bore you with reciting the recipe because it's a little bit more of an in-depth recipe, but I will be sharing it on our Instagram in the coming days if you're interested.
Oh, that sounds really good.
Yeah, it's kind of like a wintry type drink, I think, because of the, like,
Yeah.
I don't know, the cranberries and the rosemary,
Yeah.
but I think a fall winter beverage.
Gonna have to try that this fall.
Interesting. We hope you enjoyed the book discussion of The Project by Courtney Summers. Who knew we'd be reading so much YA this year? Don't forget the author's website, and a link to purchase a copy of the book will be in the details of today's episode.
If you'd like to suggest a book for us to discuss or have a topic idea for a future episode, email us at talkbookishpodcast@gmail.com or message us on Instagram at talkbookishpodcast.
Make sure you check out the show notes. There's a lot of information there, including the signature cocktail we paired with the book. And until next time, happy reading!